My next guest is the premier specialist on understanding what happens when you take a regulatory agency and basically scrap it, make it to where it doesn't work, make it to where they're not looking over anybody's shoulder, making it to the point to where the people they're supposed to be regulating can get away with virtually murder. Troy Rafferty probably has handled more of the big cases where regulatory agencies have dropped the ball than probably anybody in the country. Troy, I think to me the best story to have the listeners understand how serious it is with regulatory agencies is just pick any, but pick the Accutane story. I mean, this is one you just tried a case and hit them for $18 million. But the Accutane story is one of those stories where we think that our children are safe. We think that when there's a prescription drug that the doctor gives them and they take it, everything's going to be okay. Buddy, this story turns it on its head, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely, Mike. There's I think as a whole, people believe that because of our system here in the FDA, well, if things are approved by the Food and Drug by the FDA, that all of a sudden then everything's okay, that it's safe and you go ahead and take it when that couldn't, nothing could be further from the truth. It is a system right now that, quite frankly, even in some of the investigations that have been done, have shown that there are some serious flaws in how the FDA conducts.
Troy, I saw an article where the FDA actually is spying on their own scientists to make sure that they cooperate with the drug industry.
Yeah. There's been a number of different investigations that have gone on where the FDA has had investigations done, quite frankly, to see how they're interacting with the companies and how their processes work, how they monitor when adverse drug events are coming in. I mean, in some of the antiquated systems that they use still, in that regard, and how the companies are able to, basically get around it.
Yeah, in the last story I saw, the FDA actually they were monitoring the in-house scientists and doctors who were complaining that some of the drugs that they were following it's just not that they would cause injury, but they would kill people. And so some of the scientists that were monitored actually were asked to leave. They were reprimanded. They were put into no man's land to where they couldn't be involved. Let me just, I don't mean just right off the top, but let's pick Accutane. This is one you just tried. How did this drug that virtually kills people by causing their guts to fail? I mean, their entire digestive system just shuts down. How did a drug like that get on the market to where we give it to teenagers for acne? How did that happen?
A lot of people don't even realize, obviously Accutane, which is the brand name for isotretinoin. Accutane was actually developed initially as a chemotherapy. I mean, that's how strong of a drug it is. And it was only subsequently then, marketed and used for acne. But it is an incredibly potent drug, and it is one that, quite frankly, was approved and allowed to be put on the market with initial clinical studies of only 523 people.
How does that happen? And then, okay, so then the doctor says, yeah, you can give this to your child for their acne. And most of the time, if I remember this story right, and again, I'm just picking this story. I don't mean to put you on the spot. I know you may not even have all the facts on this, but the memory is that this is a story where the doctors were basically lied to about the safety, okay? Mm-hmm. And they had no way of going back and finding out that the clinicals had been phonied up in many situations. And the problem was it would cause things like Crohn's disease or colitis. It would cause inflammatory bowel disease or rectal bleeding or birth defects or liver damage. How does that happen?
Absolutely.
That we don't know about that it simply just gets by us? How does that happen?
Well, what happens is the company starts, and quite frankly, the companies, and what a lot of people don't realize is the FDA doesn't do any of its own studies. The FDA doesn't do any of its own testing. It's an honor system. it has to rely upon the information given to it by the drug sponsor, in this case, the drug manufacturer. And so you have to understand and start with that premise that they're only reviewing the information that's given to them by the drug companies. And when you're talking about drug companies and you're talking about the kind of money that's involved and the type of, the profits that are out there, the potential
how much
profits
did
that
they
are
make?
out
Do you
there.
have any memory of what they made on Accutane, for example?
Oh my gosh! I mean, it's billions.
Okay, and while they were making billions, they knew that children were actually dying from the drug or being permanently injured, critically injured for the rest of their life.
There's, obviously there's a number of different side effects that are, not, in addition to the horrific, digestive, diseases such as Crohn's, the permanent and debilitating, Crohn's and ulcerative colitis. In addition to that, it also causes birth defects. It causes, psychiatric problems.
Okay, let me ask you something. What we see so many times in these cases, whether it's BP in an oil spill where a regulatory agency has just been commandeered by the industry, most of the time the agency has some insight into what the history of the company is. Now, this company, this is Roche Hoffman. We're talking about Accutane here. This is Roche Hoffman. My memory is that they were voted number 1 in the list of 100 corporate criminals sometime in the 1990s. Do you have any memory of that?
I know that they faced a lot of different charges.
Okay, so coming into this, my point being, well, I do remember they were voted number 1 in the list of 100 corporate criminals for things like kickbacks, things like withholding safety information, things that criminal conspiracy that they had to plead guilty to. Mm-hmm. Okay, so the FDA knows that. And they know that this is a company that wants to introduce a new drug. Do they do anything different in the way they evaluate this company, knowing the history of Roche Hoffman?
No. Hoffman LaRoche has been. No, they don't approach it any differently. They don't approach it any differently. They simply, take the information that's given to them by the company and understand they're of course massively underfunded. They're massively understaffed. They have a system that's unworkable. They have a system that's unmanageable. They have a system that doesn't. Isn't there and is incapable, according to one investigation, incapable of protecting the American public. From these exact type of situation.
So, Troy, what does a person do? I mean, what do? You go to the doctor, you see some ad on television, you say, well, I'm going to go try this drug because they say it's going to cure my problem. Yeah, I hear them say it's going to shut my liver down and shut my kidneys down. It's going to depress me, cause suicide. I see all that, but I'm going to go ask the doc whether I can have this drug anyway. Now, would you ever advise anybody to take a drug that, unless we know for sure it's going to save their lives, would you ever advise anybody to take a drug that hadn't been on the market more than 5 years?
That's the problem. Is you're exactly right. I mean, so often the American public are used as the guinea pigs basically for these drugs because of the way the system works. And so until that drug is out on the market and is being, it has been used for a number of years and proven to be safe, then, you don't know.
What would be the minimum number of years that you'd advise?
Boy, I tell you, I don't know.
Yeah,
I honestly, it's so, it's just.
I would go with 5.
It's so incredibly.
Unless it's something that is going to save your life. Right. Go with 5 years. Don't even think about it, especially when there's something else out there that'll do the same thing. Troy Rafferty, continue following regulatory agencies. I mean, continue getting the story. These every day there's a new story about the failure of a regulatory agency. Right now, the big one, of course, is BP, but you hear about a drug case virtually every month. Thanks for joining me, okay?
Thanks, Mike.